Yeah, normal fire service day is cleaning the machines, doing the out duties, checking outside the shops and restaurants, just doing our job, and answering a few calls. I'd only been a driver for 2 weeks, so for me it was practice driving the fire engine. Every time we went out it was nice and steady and slow, and just I was a very inexperienced driver. And then late in the afternoon we had the call for the car alight, and we all thought it was a bit of a joke really, that she was just going probably get overtime because it was a late call. And as we drove down into Brixton, into Roughton Road, the police let us through. There was a police cordon. We still didn't think much of it, didn't know why the police were there, and they just let us through. And as we drove up Roughton Road, it was the area was just completely full of people standing there shouting. We didn't know. We still didn't know. It may have been a carnival. I didn't know what it was. And then the crowd let us through, and then shut down again. So they'd obviously got us through into the crowd, and then they just all hell broke loose. They just bricks, bottles, stones, anything that was coming into the cab. Well, at the time, the driver, because you have to get out the fire station so quickly, the driver doesn't wear fire kit. The driver just has a t-shirt and trousers on. So I had no protection at all. And an 8-inch piece of paving slab came through the windscreen and smashed me in the chest. The officer in charge just said, if you can keep going, don't stop. Don't kill anybody, but don't stop. We did manage to get through up to where the car alight was, and I couldn't get the fire pump to work because I was in too much pain. So the other crew from Brixton had arrived. They got the fire pump to work, and the guys were very, very professional. They all jumped out, did their job, put the car out. Then they suddenly realised that I was still in the cab, and an ambulance was called, and I was ferried out in an ambulance. Unfortunately, they smashed the ambulance up as well on my way out, so I had 2 lots of it. But I was probably only there for 5-10 minutes, and I didn't do any firefighting because I just couldn't get out of the cab. And then I was off work for 6 weeks. Yeah, well, when we was driving, we could hear all the bricks and bottles and stones smashing against the fire engine. And when it came through the windscreen, I was smashed in the chest. I thought, and it still lives with it, I thought I was going to die. I thought, that's it. And the big thing was my officer in charge kept saying, don't hit anybody. And I realised that if I hit the public, they would probably stop the fire engine, climb in and kill everybody on the fire engine. That's how serious it really was. And we was absolutely terrified that they was going to stop that fire engine. How I got it through without hitting anybody, to this day I don't remember that bit at all. But the injuries were suspected ruptured spleen, 2 broken ribs, broken left arm. But I just thought I was going to die. And then when they took me to King's College Hospital, there was about 30 or 40 people laying there with the same sort of injuries. Police officers, ambulance drivers, traffic warden. So it wasn't just the fire service, it wasn't just me, I realised that. But and I was diagnosed some years later with post-traumatic stress syndrome. But as years go by, it dims, but the day still lives with everybody, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, you see a lot of people talking about this on the TV when they come back from the war and stuff like that. And sometimes you wonder, how can that possibly be? But now, even 30 years on, I have difficulty travelling around Brixton on my own. And if there's large crowds, even on holiday, I'm very aware of the large crowd around me, and I have to be with somebody. It's irrational, I know, because it's not going to happen again. But it does stick with you, and you are worried about these things. And if I'm driving around Brixton, I take a big route around to avoid coming up Roughton Road, Shakespeare Road. I just try and avoid it. It's just anxiety, really, that's all. Yeah, definitely up Roughton Road. In those days, it was called the Front Line. I don't know if you're aware of that. and it was the front line with the African Caribbean community against everybody else, really, and they felt intimidated themselves, I'm sure, because it's very difficult for me to drive up and down and around those areas. Yeah. Well, it is tragic because my wife worked here for 30 years. She works in a solicitor's office in Brixton, in the High Street. I went to school here. I lived in the community, and it's devastating to see local people. They might only own one shop. They're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do the newspapers, and and then their livelihoods are just taken away by people that have got a gripe and a grievance against the government, against the police, but for some reason they feel they can steal from the local community. I've never understood the connection there, never understood why they turn on their local people.